Centralized planning does not work, right? No matter where we look at this in history, we've always seen it to fail. We see this, of course, happening no matter if you appoint it under one person in the case of a dictatorship, or whether you appoint it under a group of people, like in the case of communism. It always leads to an unmitigated disaster time and time again. How many of us has worked in retail and have gotten an order from corporate from some person who has no idea what it's like on the ground? And they'll say do X, Y, and Z, but of course you know, because you're right there, that doing X, Y, and Z will have this, and this as the consequence of it. Alright, that's what centralized planning has always created, this case of where the person who's up top has no idea what's really happening. The further down it goes, the less connected that person from the top truly is to the situation. And right now, Australia has been just a huge case of why centralized planning will always fail the citizenry of a country. Australia, I think a lot of you, I'm pretty sure have already heard the story what happened with the dogs up for adoption, right? There was a bunch of dogs up for adoption, and because they didn't want people to travel there, they thought it was a better idea to send cops there and put a bullet in each of those dogs. To just put them all down, because we don't want people traveling to adopt them. That would be awful. I don't think the people who are in government actually thought this would be a consequence of their lockdowns, but hey, it is, and they hold full responsibility for it. Now, as much as I'm glad that story has gone around a lot, because let's face it, we all love our dogs, this story right here is far more important. This story right here is the government condemning 4 babies to death rather than give them the surgeries they needed, because they want to continue to enforce a just draconian style of travel restrictions in their country. So right here, 4 newborns die after being denied heart surgery because of travel restrictions in Australia. These are the effects of the lockdowns. When Trump said, we have to make sure the cure isn't worse than the disease, this is what he's talking about right here. In a case where, because of the government's laws and restrictions due to COVID, they have condemned 4 children to death. So I want to take a moment to really look through the story. Again, it's a sad story. It's sad, but I think it's something that really needs to be talked about, because Australia is in a terrible spot right now. It has mass protests, mass rioting, and it's because of things like these. And yes, I live in America. I get it. Not my country. We can say, we have freedom, of course. You can't do this sort of stuff in America. Well, guess what? They're trying. All right. They've already started saying that Biden said he might want some form of travel restriction between states. You have de Blasio over there saying that, you can't go to a restaurant if, you don't have your IDs, if you don't show them your papers. Absolutely crazy fascist style stuff, right? Really combining business with government when they say, hey, we're going to make these businesses follow our restrictions and our rules, right? They're saying you must enforce our policies upon your employees and your customers. This is fascism. 100%. Mussolini described fascism, I believe, as everything within the state and nothing working outside the state. And that is what they're exactly doing. They're bringing every business within these state mandates and forcing them to abide by them. So before we say this won't happen in America, I'm telling you, it might not be as extreme as Australia, but things are coming down the pipeline, and we have to be aware of the unintended consequences that these things might create. So, again, 4 newborns die after being denied heart surgery because of the travel restrictions. 4 babies died in Adelaide, Australia over the last 4 weeks after being denied transport to Melbourne because of the government COVID restrictions, health officials say. Adelaide, the capital city of the state of South Australia, doesn't offer pediatric cardiac surgery according to a local news report. This means about 100 babies are sent interstate for treatment annually, typically to Melbourne Royal Children's Hospital. Because of the lockdown restrictions, however, Melbourne no longer remains an option. Patients must be sent to Sydney instead. The distance from Adelaide to Melbourne is about 725 kilometers. Sorry, American here. A flight of roughly 75 minutes, while the distance to Sydney is about 1,375. A flight of nearly 2 hours. An extra 45 minutes might not sound like a lot of time, but when you're talking about surgery on a vital organ of a sick infant, minutes matter. And they are 100% right about this. I mean, I think everyone's been in a hospital and knows that, when something goes down, you don't have a lot of time. You need as soon as absolutely possible. Me and my wife just had our first baby about 4 months ago, and we made sure the hospital that we went to, they had everything needed just in case. Even though she was doing a natural birth, we wanted to make sure that even though she was doing a natural birth, that if something were to arise, we had the facility there to be able to utilize, right? We wanted to make sure that we had everything right near us. So we made sure we had the best hospital we could find to have our child at, because we wanted everything within seconds, if not minutes, right? So this is a very important factor here, is that just, might not seem like a lot of time difference here, but when it comes to medical emergencies, seconds matter. Not just minutes, but seconds matter. You need to be right on top of it. The infants never left Adelaide, news report indicate, presumably because the doctors either determined they would not survive the lengthy trip, or because Sydney's Children's Hospital at Westmead, the lone hospital available due to travel restrictions, lacked the capacity to treat them. Whatever the case, because of travel restrictions and lack of cardiac centers in Adelaide, the infant failed to receive treatment that could have saved their lives. Dr. John Svigos, an obstetrician and gynecologist, told Australia TV News 9 Network 9 News that 4 babies who died in Adelaide almost certainly would have benefited from on-site surgery. He noted that a recent state restriction on travel inhibited the hospital's ability to get the infants treated at any other facilities. Particularly in our COVID situation, where the usual process of referral to the Melbourne cardiac unit is no longer tenable, the referral to Sydney is on a case-by-case basis. As Svigos, who has operated a small practice at Women's and Children's Hospital in Adelaide since 1978, I shall leave it to you to imagine the profound effect of these deaths on the parents of the families and the dedicated medical and nursing staff in dealing with these tragedies. So, again, this is easily one of the most horrendous cases we could imagine when it comes to these restrictions, right? Children literally being denied the treatment they need because they're in a different state. At that point, are you even in the same country? That's what I want to know. At that point, when do you say you're not even in the same country, right? You can't go across state boundaries. Guess what? Your state's now an independent country. Absolute lunacy in this case. The state has now condemned, who knows how many more people they've condemned to death because of this. I mean, this is a case that we know about, but how many other people needed someone in a pinch yet couldn't go to the hospital they needed to get to? Couldn't get the experts they needed because they were not in their state. These are the unintended consequences that happen when a centralized authority thinks they can run your life. When it thinks that they can run the hospital, as a matter of fact. I mean, the reality is that the idea that, a centralized authority can actually figure out what's best for every individual across, even if you talk about across a state, let alone a country, is absolute lunacy. It's one of these ideas that we think that, we're smarter than those who came before us. So, I know what's best for the people. I know what's best for the people. If only everyone listened to me. I think Ron Paul said it best when he goes, I don't know, I don't know what you need in your life, because and that's why I'm not going to try to control your life, right? I don't know what's going to make you happy. I don't know what you need. I don't know what you're going through in the same way that you do. Therefore, I can give you my advice, but I can't tell you what to do. This is up for you to decide. And we leave it up to the individuals to decide because they are the closest to the problem. They understand the problem better than anyone else. These doctors understand the problems better than anyone else. So why not let them make that decision to send them over to Melbourne? Why have a travel restriction between a hospital? These are the unintended consequences, right? This is what's happening right now in Australia, and what will happen in more places across the world here coming up, because more places are starting to really crack down on this idea of doing travel restrictions between areas. It's funny, the left likes to say they're for the working class. They're for the working class. Well, guess where the working class typically lives? They don't live in cities. All right, they live on the outskirts. Or they live in the middle of absolute nowhere, which is where I would prefer to be, where there isn't a lot of medical facilities always around. Because of that, they have to travel. Like right now, my grandfather's going through chemo. A lot of people I know, well, you just go to the local hospital. Well, for him, that's almost an hour drive, right? It's a long way for him to get his treatment each day. When the real working class is the one who gets hurt by stuff like travel restrictions. The real working class is the one who gets hurt by almost any of these crazy lockdowns that are happening at this point in time. The only people who are actually able to do well are people who, I'll be honest, who like me and my family, who are kind of white collar workers, right? I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'm not working class. Neither is my wife. Neither is my parents at this point. They were at one point, but not anymore. We're all white collar workers at this point, right? We can sit at home, and these lockdowns haven't affected me because I stay at home and work from home. Same thing with my wife. Same thing with, a lot of people who I know. But then when I look at the people who I know who are working class, they're the ones who are really suffering. They're the ones who are bearing the brunt of this. And this right here, the case of these newborns dying, it's a horrendous, horrendous, horrendous case, but there'll be more. There will be more because the unintended consequences of whenever you have a centralized authority, it impacts people on so many levels that you will never understand. Right? There are so many stories that you will never hear of people who have been impacted because of these lockdowns. People who've lost relatives, and you look at the mental health crisis that came from them. Trump was right when he said the cure could not be worse than the disease. And unfortunately, we're getting to a point where the cure is far, far, far worse than a disease with a 99%, recovery rate. It's just sad. As someone who really just had a kid and who are, we're working on number 2, this is just, I can't imagine if I heard the news that my kid would not be able to get heart surgery because of a government mandate. At that point, I think I'll just pull him into my car and just try to go and try to make the trip regardless and spend my time in jail after the fact. I don't know. I don't know what they can do there. I don't know how everything works over in Australia. All I know is I can't imagine what those parents must be going through. And they're not alone. Think of everyone who's lost a relative because of something like, depression, which has been a major, rampant case going on because of these lockdowns. These lockdowns have impacts that the people who are imposing them do not recognize, nor do they understand. I'm not saying they intentionally said, we're going to kill a bunch of children. No. I believe they did this because they want power and because they think that with that power, they know how to rule our lives better than we can, which is still evil, which is still despicable. But I don't think they intended on trying to kill a bunch of people. I think they are really dumb enough to think they actually can be the saviors of people. And I say that's a bigger issue. These people actually believe that through these restrictions and through these mandates, they know better than you. They know better than your family. They know better than all of us. And they're going to save us because only someone so stupid as them would ever even think that they would know how everyone else should live. Only someone who has no humility whatsoever would ever imagine a centralized authority properly working. This is why we have to make sure we keep fighting. This is why we have to make sure that we continue to push back against these terrible restrictions, because the unintended consequences that happen from them will be disastrous. All right, we have to make sure we constantly electing the right people in office. You have to make sure we constantly are electing people like DeSantis who are pushing back against the federal government, saying no, state rights come first, as is in our Constitution. We cannot become Australia. We have to make sure we avoid becoming an authoritarian hellhole like them as much as possible. The cities, they're a lost cause. But we can at least work in some of the states that we're in to at least elect local representation that will make sure they hold the ground on these laws. Because as we can see with what happened to the dogs that were put down by the cops in Australia, cops aren't going to save you. Cops aren't going to stop it. They're going to enforce these rules the same as they always have. All these people say, we won't enforce, draconian measures. That's, we're for the people. Nah, they'll enforce it the same as any other cop would. All right? That's just how it goes. So we have to make sure we are focused in our local election. We have to make sure we're focused coming up here in 2022 to really make sure the people we get in office are individualist, who believe that you own your life, you own your own liberty, it's your responsibility. You know what's best for you and your family, not them, not the government. No, it's a little bit of a ramble, but I had to get off my chest, especially when I saw this story and saw the fact it really wasn't getting the attention I think it really deserves. Again, 4 children killed by the Australian government. Simple as that. Either way, if you've enjoyed this video, please make sure you like it. It really goes a long way, really does help. Subscribe to the channel, try and do daily videos at this point, so definitely subscribe and leave a comment below. What do you think is going on in Australia right now? Why is it that they are so authoritarians? I mean, I always thought Australia was kind of like, one of those spots where it was like, hey, yeah, we stick up, we're men, we're manly men. And it turns out, no, they're a bunch of wimps who just allow themselves to get walked all over. So, leave a comment below. Let me know, why are they so authoritarian? Why is that? How did that even happen? I have no idea. Either way, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you again real soon.